Today on Notsam Wrestling, who will be the first mystery participant in the John Cena Last Time Is Now tournament as we get closer to 2026? Who should be a babyface and who should be a heel? Drew McIntyre gets suspended from SmackDown. Chelsea Green wins back the United States Championship. And how does the road to superstardom for Dominik Mysterio truly begin? This is Notsam Wrestling. Welcome to Notsam Wrestling. And I've got to say, sometimes this show becomes about venting. And I don't know if venting is the right word, but it's just, I have thoughts. Maybe it's about putting it out into the universe. Maybe it's manifestation. I don't know how you would describe it, but I have these thoughts, and I feel like if they don't get out, then they'll be trapped somewhere in some, between two dimensions. All these ideas that should happen, or I would love to see happen, or I hope happen. And one of those ideas is an idea that I've been talking about, an idea that I've been thinking about more and more lately. And with every show, it becomes more apparent to me that it's where we need to go. And that, of course, is all roads leading to Dominik Mysterio becoming a major player for the WWE in terms of being a babyface. Cody Rhodes did a podcast interview last week where he talked about, the future stars of WWE, and Dominik Mysterio was the name that he brought up. And that should come as no surprise to anybody. All you have to do is listen to the reactions that Dominik gets, and the fact that, no matter what is happening in the WWE, that whatever story Dominik Mysterio is attached to retains the attention of the audience. The audience cares what Dominik is doing, and he's developed to the point that he can deliver in the ring. And once you've got those two things, there's very little that can stop you. And so the question becomes, when is it time to really pull the trigger? When does it go from potential to actuality? And you're seeing that, and we'll talk about some more of those people later on today maybe, but for a long time, a couple years now, those names, we've all heard the same names been bandied about saying this is going to be the future, this is going to be the future, this is going to be the future, and at some point, the future becomes now. At some point, it's not enough to just say, well, they're here, and when the time comes, they'll be the ones running the place. It's like, no, you can't, you have to actively put those steps in motion. You can't expect it to just kind of happen. And I think that that's what we're in the midst of right now. That's what we're ready to see happen, specifically with the Dominik Mysterio. Now, I put out a video and I put out an update podcast about the potential of Rey Mysterio and Dominik Mysterio, because on Monday Night Raw last week, Dominik was cutting his promo. And by the way, the fact that CM Punk brings up Dominik Mysterio, and then Dominik Mysterio cuts a promo and Rey Mysterio's involved. And then Dominik Mysterio does a backstage and the Judgment Day's involved and there's tension there. And then Dominik comes out during the Judgment Day's match and he gets into an altercation with Sheamus. It's that's how you know that you've got a strong character. Without even people kind of connecting the dots, you've now attached 4 different stories to Dominik Mysterio, and people are at least somewhat, to varying degrees, invested in all of them because, he's a highly, he's a person of high interest in WWE, a character, I should say, of high interest. But when you see Rey and Dom together in the ring, when you see that Dominik Mysterio is in that ring, he's trying to celebrate, he's calling himself King of the Luchadors, and Rey Mysterio comes out, and Rey Mysterio is recovered from his injury, and Rey Mysterio is ready to come back. Of course, the first thing that pops into your head, which is what we discussed, is that Survivor Series is going to be in San Diego, California, and that could be a location for the next match between Rey Mysterio and Dominik Mysterio. And logically, you'd have to go, because we saw this match happen at WrestleMania 39, and Rey Mysterio got the victory, and that story was told. Of course, the story will always be there because he's Rey's son, and the whole character, the foundation of the character, is calling his dad a deadbeat. And Rey Mysterio might be the most beloved, when it comes to just purely beloved, might be the most purely beloved professional wrestler of the modern era in the last 20 years. Everybody loves Rey Mysterio. That's why this whole thing has worked. But the question is obviously going to be, well, why now? What is the beat, the story beat now that puts Rey and Dom together in a match? Why is now the appropriate time to revisit this story? And I think the one conclusion that I drew, because no matter where you go with this Dominik Mysterio, for me, all roads need to lead to him turning babyface, and to lead there quickly, to lead to that happening now, not a year from now, not 6 months from now, not breadcrumbs, not the foundation, now. Build the house. The foundation is there. The basement's in. Build the house. Do it now. And, you know, and I think I came up with a interesting enough way of having Dominik Mysterio beat Rey with the Judgment Day's help. And then the Judgment Day jumps Rey Mysterio, and then Dominik Mysterio stops the Judgment Day from jumping Rey Mysterio, and then because they're going too hard, and all of a sudden, now Dominik is taking his dad's side, who there's still tension with, against the Judgment Day. Now all of a sudden, you've built this sort of babyface team that Dominik Mysterio becomes the centerpiece of. And that's all well and good. But the more I thought about it, it was just a matter of like, how do I respond to what I'm seeing in front of my face? I am seeing Rey Mysterio and Dominik Mysterio have this altercation. How do I respond to that and bring it to Survivor Series? That is the best case scenario. But the more I thought about it, the more that scenario cannot remove the John Cena versus Dominik Mysterio scenario from my head. I want John Cena versus Dominik Mysterio. I don't want that to be a tournament match. I want that to be the Survivor Series match. I want the dynamic of San Diego losing their minds because they get to see John Cena one last time and he's a babyface, but also losing their minds because Dominik Mysterio is there. And Dominik Mysterio doesn't get booed anymore. And he especially won't get booed in San Diego. Even in a match against John Cena, Dom is just not going to get booed. I want this because the Cena match, I think, is a more Dom-centered match. Meaning that it's a match that is not about the Mysterios, it's about Dominik Mysterio. And I think that this is the match that people are waiting for in this John Cena retirement tour. This is the match that people have kind of said, I want a match like this throughout the entire year that we haven't really gotten. Okay? I mean, Dominik at this point is not MJF. For a while, you could kind of line up Dominik and MJF as those two pure, absolute heels in wrestling right now that just absolutely work. People buy tickets to boo those guys, and that's all well and good, right? But it's not the same thing anymore. MJF is still that guy, to the point where, in hindsight, MJF probably should not have turned babyface when he turned babyface. I think that having MJF earlier this year come back as a full-on heel was refreshing, and I think the idea of when he does come back to AEW, him being the baddest heel that he's ever been is ultimately what people want to see. They want to boo MJF, but that's not where Dominik Mysterio is at anymore. People, they liked booing Dom for a while. People were having fun booing him so he couldn't cut those promos anymore. But the fact is, if you watch the show, they're not booing him. People refuse to boo Dominik Mysterio. I actually find that there seems to be a disconnect that's growing with the audience when he's treated like a heel on the show. When CM Punk says he's a guy I want to punch in the face, when he does heel stuff and a baby face is almost going like, I can't believe he did that. And the audience is like, we like that. There's this disconnect when you set things in motion that should result in Dominik Mysterio getting booed. Because in most scenarios right now, the WWE audience that is in the arena is willing to go with what they're supposed to go with. If they realize, like, okay, this is a bad guy, we're going to boo him. If this is a good guy, we're going to cheer him. It's generally, like, the WWE audience has been a more rebellious audience in the past, but that's not what they're doing now. But with Dominik, they're like, no, we love him. We want to cheer this guy. And so I think that there is sometimes, you can kind of feel it. Like, that's why sometimes the reaction to Dominik's entrance is bigger than like the end of the match, because the end of the match is almost structured to have him looking like a heel, but the audience is like, we're not We're not willing to boo him. And then when he does these promos, they're cheering him, they're singing his name. Like it's not split, it's not half and half, it's no tweener. It's a straight up babyface reaction. Now, of course, having a match with Rey where he saves Rey from the Judgment Day will get that job done. But the beauty of the John Cena match for me, the beauty of having John Cena versus Dominik Mysterio at Survivor Series is that people will go in and they will assume that because John Cena has never won the Intercontinental Championship, that if you make this an Intercontinental Championship match, and we know it's his second to last match, well, now we'll say, well, of course, John Cena is going to win the Intercontinental Championship, and then he's going to defend it against whoever wins the John Cena tournament. And I think that that's a great dynamic to go into Survivor Series with, right? Because more so than any other scenario, you truly believe that John Cena is going to win that title because John Cena hasn't been a Grand Slam champion, because John Cena held the United States Championship, but never the Intercontinental Championship. He was already, by the time he was on Raw, he was already fighting for that WWE Championship and never really got out of that picture enough to get the Intercontinental Championship. I mean, and I think that there are, from the beginning, there were people that were saying like, well, that's one thing I'd like to see John Cena do. And I think that it is possible. It is possible that is the direction that they would go in, which is why we believe it, right? Because it makes sense. But I really hope they do this match, and I really hope it's not the direction that they go in. I really hope that they go, no, we know that that's expected, and we know that that's a very logical story, because that's the thing right now. WWE, more often than not, tells a very logical story, almost to the point where you can predict it. And a lot of times that is the way to go. People want a story that just makes sense. But you can set up a story where both ways make sense, right? And just when they think you're going to go left, boom, you swing a right. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I think that because people would assume that John Cena is going to win the Intercontinental Championship, and because people love Dominik Mysterio, it's really simple. You have Dominik Mysterio win the match. I mean, I think Dominik Mysterio coming out to that match with a cheat to win t-shirt on, looking like Eddie Guerrero looked in the parking lot brawl that he had on SmackDown with John Cena, would just be a chef's kiss to all of it. And I think that just like my scenario for Rey Mysterio, this is the precipice for Dom being a full-on babyface. But that doesn't mean that Dom wins clean. Just because I want Dom to win, and just because I want Dom to be a babyface after, doesn't mean I want Dom to win clean. I think Dom should do one of his Eddie tricks. I think Dom should do one of the Eddie tricks that Eddie pulled on John Cena himself. And I think there will be this feeling of shock when Dominik Mysterio actually beats John Cena. Because we all could debate whether or not he's going to win his last match. But his second to last match, of course he's going to win his second to last match. Of course he's going to be the Intercontinental Champion. He's never won it before. And then boom, Dominik Mysterio loosens his boot or throws a chair, does whatever Dom's going to do. Uses a bell hammer and beats John Cena. But what I'd like to see John Cena do, and this is the key for me, at the end of the match, I would like to see John Cena looking at Dominik Mysterio with this look, and he could say it, kind of wagging his finger and going like, you got me. You know, like I was talking about this like last week. The fact that on Saturday night's main event in the triple threat match, instead of Michael Cole calling Dominik Mysterio a weasel, Michael Cole said that Dominik Mysterio had outsmarted his opponents. And that right there is how you get a guy doing the exact same thing he's always been doing, but transfer him from a heel to a babyface. I think instead of John Cena reacting as if he's been wronged or reacting as if Dominik Mysterio has done something that he was not fair or had little integrity or he shouldn't have done, John Cena kind of going, you got me, kid. You got me. Is John Cena's way of going, no, 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 no. And this is very in character for John Cena. The John Cena that we know would not say, oh, this wasn't fair, would not say like, oh, this is against the rules. He would say, you know what? I should have seen that coming. I should have been aware that you were going to do that. And maybe you could have John Cena catch his tricks once or twice. But John Cena says, I should have seen that coming. And then he shakes Dom's hand. And Dom accepts the handshake. Now, he doesn't go so far, right? Because you don't want to just do a full 180. He's not going to raise Dominik's arm. He's not going to hug him. He's not going to do it. Just shake Dom's hand. That's it. Just shake Dom's hand. And then Dom can clutch both of his titles, the AAA Mega Championship and the Intercontinental Championship, and just kind of roll out of the ring. And then celebrate in the aisleways, shouting, I beat the GOAT. I beat John Cena. I'm the greatest of all time. You know what I mean? And this just leads to Dominik further saying he's the greatest of all time because he just beat the greatest of all time. And then John Cena's in the ring just kind of nodding his head, going, no, he got me. And then looking at the camera and going, one more. We got one more. John Cena can take the loss. It's John Cena losing to Dom at Survivor Series does not affect John Cena's last match one iota at all. You know? And then I think, but what I think is key is that Dominik has pulled out one of his tricks here and won in a very Dominik way. But it wasn't with the Judgment Day's help. Once again, as we've been seeing with Dominik, the Judgment Day is not there to help Dominik. And now that Dominik has beaten John Cena without the help of the Judgment Day, well, when we move on past Saturday night's main event, the Judgment Day will start to feel insecure about the legitimate boost that has now been given to Dominik Mysterio. That Dominik Mysterio can look at other members of the Judgment Day and say, well, I've beaten John Cena. I've beaten John Cena, right? And now Finn Balor feels a type of way and JD McDonough feels a certain way. And you know, the Judgment Day is just like, whoa. Like we were trying to kind of assert power against him, but clearly he's the one. So I think that it can lead to the Judgment Day turning on Dominik Mysterio, and they could do it that night. The same way the Judgment Day turned on Edge. You know what I mean? Like maybe they go, okay, we're going to throw you a party tonight, Dominik. And then the Judgment Day turns on Dominik. And who's there to help Dominik but Rey Mysterio? Right? And then maybe Roxanne starts putting the boots to Dominik. And there's nothing Rey can do. Rey's not going to put his hands on a woman, but here comes Liv Morgan. You can still get to... And Dom and Rey, like Rey will go out to help Dominik because that is his son. Dom is still a little like, I don't know. Like there's never going to be a closeness there. But the idea that you can bounce off of this and still pretty easily go to Dominik, Liv Morgan, and Rey Mysterio versus Finn Balor, JD McDonough, and Roxanne Perez, that is a hell of a mixed 6-person tag. And I think that that's the beginning. That's where you start with this Dominik babyface run. You know, and as far as why John Cena would lose this match, there's a few reasons. Number one, in all honesty, why does John Cena need the Intercontinental Championship? You know, like realistically, I know it's a thing he hasn't done, but it's a box to check. You know what I mean? Like nobody, like there are plenty of people who have won Triple Crowns. There are plenty of people who have been Grand Slam champions. Miz has won it twice. And that's not to take anything away from the Miz, but John Cena's not going to be able to say he's won it twice. So it's not like he's going to be the best Grand Slam winner ever. He's going to be a Grand Slam winner. The real thing was John Cena being the one to beat Flair's record. The real thing was John Cena being the never seen 17, and he did it. Being a Grand Slam champion, like, is less impressive than being the never seen 17. To say that John Cena won the world championship 17 times, nobody then turns around and says, yeah, but how many times you win Intercontinental? Nobody's saying that. Nobody cares. So I don't think, I mean, sure, you know, the more titles, the better, but I don't think it's all that important to his legacy the way winning 17 was. And I think if you have John Cena lose this match, then it gives you, in terms of putting people over, in terms of giving people the rub, it gives you everything that everybody has wanted out of this last John Cena run. It's like people go like, who is John Cena going to pass the torch to? He's already done that. He passed the torch to Cody Rhodes at SummerSlam of this year in New Jersey. That match was the torch pass. He's already done it. John Cena passed the torch to Cody Rhodes. And what the torch pass means is not one day you will be the next John Cena. It's yours now. When you pass the torch, it's like it's a baton. Look at when the Olympic torch is being run through and somebody takes that torch and passes it to the next person. That person doesn't go, okay, I'm going to run with this torch like in a few years. They go, I'm going to run with this torch right now. I'm going to keep the race going. Passing the torch is how you keep the business going now. You can't pass the torch to a young guy who's not ready to be the next John Cena. So when Cody beat John Cena for the championship, that was John Cena passing the torch. Okay. But there are three things that you can really do with a John Cena loss. You can pass the torch, and that's what he did to Cody Rhodes. You can also make a heel, right? And that's what he did for Brock Lesnar 12 years ago or 11 years ago, 11 and change at, what was it, SummerSlam, I guess it would have been 2014, when Brock Lesnar took him to Suplex City. That was how you got this big heel over. And Brock Lesnar beating him at WrestlePalooza, I don't think that that's about the bigger picture of Brock Lesnar. I think that's about Brock Lesnar immediately becoming a larger threat going into 2026 so that somebody is able to beat Brock Lesnar. But I think that there is still room to make that heel. And that's why, and I know some people disagree with me, but I think Gunther is the guy that should beat John Cena in John Cena's last match. I really do. I think that Gunther returning from this injury, he's had two large losses this year. He lost to Jey Uso at WrestleMania. He lost to CM Punk at SummerSlam. And Gunther's not the type of guy who gets affected that deeply by losses. I get it. But you want to bring Gunther back stronger than ever. You want Gunther. He's the one guy that could fill that position of being impervious to anything. The one mountain that is insurmountable. The one wall that you cannot climb is Gunther. And to have Gunther beat John Cena in John Cena's last match does that for Gunther. Right? So now in this retirement tour, we've passed the torch to Cody Rhodes. At Saturday night's main event, we've allowed him to push Gunther to another level. At Saturday night's main event, a Gunther victory makes Gunther a monster. It makes Gunther unbeatable on a whole different level. And some people would say that that's not true, but it is true. I don't know how better to say that. It is true. But what hasn't happened is another thing that people want to see, which is a young guy get over. And that's a conversation that pops up all the time. People don't just want to see a passing of the torch to the current top guy. They don't just want to see a big heel be made into an even bigger heel. They want to see a young guy get the rub. They want to see a young guy have this be the launching pad. Have this be the rocket that gets strapped to them. And that becomes Dominik Mysterio. That's what you can do for Dominik Mysterio. That's how you take Dominik Mysterio's babyface run that has to start. And start it with rocket fuel. Is that you have him beat John Cena to start the whole thing. And now at the end of the year, John Cena has done that for all three of them. John Cena has passed the torch to Cody Rhodes. He's made Gunther unbeatable, and he's launched Dominik Mysterio onto this path of babyface superstardom. And I think that all of it is possible if all of it gets done in that way. And will Dominik, if he were to fight John Cena at Survivor Series, will he benefit even if he loses? Yes, he definitely will. But not as much as if he wins. because people won't expect him to win. And I couldn't be a stronger advocate for that in the long term. It would just be massive, and there's literally no downside. So I don't know why one wouldn't do that, and hopefully that is exactly what happens, because for me, when you're looking at 2026, and we'll get into this, in the next several weeks, as what do we have left in this year? 7 weeks left in 2025, and that's it. So we're going to have to start having bigger conversations about 2026. But I think one of the keys of next year, of 2026, is going to be that's the year that Dominik Mysterio is looked at as a top-tier babyface. I mean, Dominik Mysterio has the potential to be a world champion, but you got to build that. You got to put the work in. And I think that there's a lot you can do in 2026 to put the work into guys like Dominik Mysterio and other people that could leave 2027 having this whole new landscape of all new superstars in WWE. In fact, I think when you look at 2026, frankly, like, Dominik Mysterio is not the only person that I'd like to see shift in terms of character going into 2026. I think Braun Breaker will eventually be a babyface, but I think Braun Breaker is right there in that, like, Braun Breaker, Dominik Mysterio, those are the guys that by 2027 we should be looking at as these are your top stars, right? But I think he'll eventually be a babyface because he's too cool, because people are going to show up to see him, because people love Braun Breaker. But it doesn't have to happen right now. It might happen before the end of 2026. I would not be surprised if halfway through the year something happens with Braun Breaker. But I think that Braun Breaker stays heel. Like when we talked about Brock Lesnar losing or beating John Cena, and people to this day go, why would that happen? I am hopeful that happened because Braun Breaker versus Brock Lesnar is the match. You don't need to do Braun Breaker versus John Cena because you can do Braun Breaker versus Brock Lesnar. And I think that's a bigger, more marquee, more impressive match anyway. I like what I've got plotted out for John Cena as is, especially because I know you go, well, what about Braun Breaker? Well, he's got Brock Lesnar in the future. And then theoretically, down the road, maybe a year from now, we can talk about the idea of Gunther closing 2025 by beating John Cena, entering into 2026 as the guy who retired Goldberg and John Cena, just plowing through everybody. And by the end, it's like, maybe it's time for Braun Breaker to step up. There's a world where Braun Breaker's crowning moment, Paul Heyman keeps calling him the future of WrestleMania. I don't think it's time for Braun Breaker to main event WrestleMania this year. But I think if you play your cards right, the main event for WrestleMania 43 could be Braun Breaker versus Gunther. And it could be a massive match by the time you get there with both of those people. But that remains to be seen. But all that said, I would let Braun Breaker just keep doing what he's doing for now. For now, let him keep doing what he's doing, and we'll get there with Braun Breaker. We don't need to do anything because right now everything's working. There are people, though, that I'd like to see turn in 2026. I'd like to see Sami Zayn turn heel sooner rather than later. And a lot of when I say, like, I'd like to see these people turn, it's not so much for the shock and awe of it. It's not because it's like, oh my God, that's a huge thing that just happened. It's because I believe in the performers, and I believe that it's time for them to tell a whole new set of stories. And I think that Sami Zayn has done most of what he can do as a babyface, especially coming off of the bloodline and everything. And I think now's the time to have a new Sami Zayn. And when I say Sami Zayn, have him turn heel, I don't mean the old pre-bloodline Sami Zayn. I don't mean Sami Zayn who was in a rivalry with Johnny Knoxville. I don't mean Sami Zayn who is a conspiracy victim. Now, by the way, that was a great Sami Zayn, and Sami Zayn performed the hell out of that version of the character. But I think that we're at the point now where Sami Zayn has main evented a WrestleMania. Sami Zayn has main evented one-on-one with Roman Reigns. Like, Sami Zayn is that dude. there's no reason why Sami Zayn cannot be a serious heel, why Sami Zayn cannot be a real threat. I think the idea of, and maybe it's post-WrestleMania, Sami Zayn being in a rivalry with a Cody Rhodes or somebody like that, I think that could be huge. Maybe it's pre-WrestleMania, whenever it is. But I think if you turn Sami Zayn, you also have this option of bringing Kevin Owens back, right? In the relationship between Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, if one of them is a heel, it kind of always ends up being Kevin Owens. He's the manipulative one. He's the win at all costs one. Well, what if Kevin Owens comes back to WWE at some point, and who knows when that will be? But what if when he comes back, it's a different Sami Zayn? What if when he comes back, Sami Zayn is the villain that now Kevin Owens has to conquer? Like, I just think that that's a whole new story involving the same people. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens with Sami Zayn as a heel is a whole new story. Sami Zayn and Jacob Fatu with Sami Zayn as a heel is a whole new story. Sami Zayn and Cody Rhodes with Sami Zayn as a heel is a whole new story. Like that's really what I'm looking at, is people who I am just a massive fan of, but it's like, let's start telling new stories with them. You know, I think a Randy Orton heel turn is imminent. You know, I think it's something we've been waiting for. I think that, and it's interesting that with those two guys, those are the last two guys to give Cody Rhodes' belt the glance. And Cody Rhodes is over there watching all of his friends look at his belt, and he's going like, enough! But it's not enough. They want it. I mean, you guys know by now, if you've been listening to the podcast, that Randy Orton is the WrestleMania opponent that I want for Cody Rhodes to defend the title against. But in order to do that, I mean real heel. I mean Randy Orton as the top heel on SmackDown, as 09 Randy Orton, as ruthless Randy Orton, as like that guy again who's just got no conscience, who's got no soul behind his eyes, the true Viper. I mean, the scorpion to the frog of Cody Rhodes. I just feel like it's we've been waiting for it for probably a year and a half at this point. Almost since Cody won the title, we've been waiting to see that from Randy Orton. And we haven't seen this version of Randy Orton, yoked up Randy. Randy that came back with a whole new lease on life after his injury 2 years ago. It's been 2 years since Randy Orton came back, and he hasn't even flirted with being a heel. And boy, is Randy Orton good at being a heel. I think that Sami Zayn and Randy Orton turning heel quickly is something that I'd really like to see. And I think it could be a whole new, like I said, set of stories. I think it could be really, really refreshing. You know, I don't think Cody Rhodes or Jey Uso should turn heel. You know, and I think that when people talk about this topic, Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso are two names that come up all the time. But for me, I think that that's insane. You know, I look at the reaction that they get from the audience, and it tells you everything you need to know. I mean, there are people on Twitter that think Jey should turn heel or that are tired of Jey. There are people on Twitter that think Cody should turn heel or they're tired of Cody. But in real life, in the actual show, no, those two guys are your baby faces. And as you're turning other people heel, or as you're trying to get heels over, you have to have those strong baby faces. I'm greatly of the opinion that if somebody is a strong baby face and a baby face that actually works, that the audience actually cheers for, that you should not turn those people until you can kind of feel it from the audience, until you know that it's time. And I don't feel that for Cody or Jey Uso right now. Jimmy, maybe. I could see Jimmy turning. I mean, I worry a little bit because I don't want it to be the exact same as before. I don't want Jimmy, doing anything with Solo or the MFTs or anything like that. But I could see a world where, like, Jey is now completely on his own, right? He's not listening to the people in his ear anymore. And Jimmy takes offense to that. Like, Jimmy turning on Jey, I think a lot of intrigue comes not just from what will happen between Jimmy and Jey, but how Roman will respond. Because Jimmy might believe that Roman's going to respond negatively towards Jey because Jey is not listening to anybody's advice anymore. But really, if you pay attention to what Roman's been telling Jey Uso, that's exactly what he's wanted from Jey, is to own the room, go out and do your own thing. So you might see a babyface Roman not loving a heel Jimmy Uso or Jimmy siding with different people because, I don't know that Jimmy right now can convince people that he can beat Roman Reigns. But I could say if anybody's going to turn, I think it's Jimmy, but that's not really one of my key proponents. My other proponent, it's Sami Zayn and Randy Orton are the two definites. Heel turn. And the last one's a babyface turn. I think Drew McIntyre's got to turn babyface. Maybe not immediately, but kind of once the end of this story, Drew McIntyre to me should absolutely turn babyface. And the reason for that is that he's told the stories that he should be telling as a heel, right? Like he told this amazing story with CM Punk that lasted a year. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult to come out of that story as the heel and just move on to the next thing. But he's done it, right? He told the story with CM Punk that was CM Punk's epic first story back in WWE. It laid the foundation for who CM Punk is today in WWE, and Drew McIntyre deserves quite a bit of credit for that based on the fact that CM Punk was injured for most of it, and interest was still kept up. I think that he comes, and then he puts Damian Priest over, and then now he's telling the story with Cody Rhodes. But he's now in the scenario where he's telling the WWE Championship story. There's no bigger story to go to from here. So either Drew McIntyre wins the WWE Championship or Drew McIntyre turns babyface. And for me, I'd like to see him turn babyface. And it's easy. Drew loses another match to Cody Rhodes. A heel mocks him for losing. Solo Sikoa can mock him for losing. One of the MFTs can mock him for losing. Whoever you want to can mock him for losing. And Drew McIntyre says, well, I may have lost to him, but I'm better than you. And now Drew McIntyre hits whoever the bad guy is that's making fun of him with a Claymore, and boom, here we are. The Miz could be the guy. The Miz goes, how many times are you going to try to do it? You know what the definition of insanity is? Trying to do the same thing, and then Drew McIntyre takes out The Miz, and now all of a sudden Drew's a babyface. It's the same thing I say with Dominik Mysterio. Like, I think that people like Drew McIntyre. I think people really like Drew McIntyre, and because of that, I don't think you have to change much about him to make him go from heel to babyface. I don't think you should change much about him. I think as it stands, people are pretty willing to cheer for Drew McIntyre. It just has to do with what stories are being told. Speaking of stories, we did get the next chapter in the Drew McIntyre Cody Rhodes story. Drew McIntyre showed up to SmackDown, kind of dressed like Waylon Mercy, which I like that. At the end of the Cody Rhodes Aleister Black match, Damian Priest interferes, but Drew McIntyre comes out, white pants, white tank top. It's interesting, by the way, that at the end of SmackDown on Friday, Drew was dressed in all white. And kind of early in this story, in the segment that led to the match that we got at Saturday night's main event, and in that match that Drew and Cody had on SmackDown, the impromptu match, Cody was dressed in all black. So in two instances here, the first time Cody as the good guy is dressed in all black, but Drew as the bad guy is dressed in all white. I don't think that that's a mistake. It's just very, very interesting. What's going on there, what's kind of being said directly beneath the surface. But as Drew is in there beating up Cody, he drops the poor referee with a Claymore. And I mean, he really drops that referee with a Claymore. Referee goes down and he is out. Nick Aldis says he's had enough. After Drew has Claymored the referee, Nick Aldis suspends Drew McIntyre and makes him go home. WWE on YouTube posted this video of Drew McIntyre getting kicked out of the arena. Drew McIntyre yelling about the fact that now they're taking food off of his family's plate, off the family's table, that they were stopping income from coming in because he was being suspended without pay. And Nick's telling him, you screwed yourself. Sounding like a certain person. I have no sympathy for Drew McIntyre. I did not screw Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre screwed Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre was very selfish. I mean, that's just the best interview ever. But it was Bobby Roode and Nick Aldis throwing Drew McIntyre out. So much TNA legacy in that one segment. And I think that there are two places for this to go. Obviously, and I think we will get it, one more title match between Drew McIntyre and Cody Rhodes. And hopefully that title match will have some kind of stipulation. And I think Survivor Series would be a good place to do that. And I think it should be some kind of a stipulation match. Obviously, it can't be a cage match because Survivor Series is War Games. But, there are various other ways you could do it, no holds barred, however you want to do it. I think that is there. But I also think that they're building up this thing where, you could do Drew McIntyre versus Nick Aldis. People are really waiting to see Nick Aldis come back. And Drew McIntyre is that vehicle that allows it to happen. The stuff that Drew McIntyre does feels so real that it feels like you're not really constrained to the roster page of WWE.com. You remember a while back, they were kind of teasing that we might get Wade Barrett versus Drew McIntyre. The Drew McIntyre was on the post-show panel or whatever it was, and Wade and Drew had that face-to-face. And for immediately, you're like, oh my God, this is where they're going with this. We're going to get Drew and Wade Barrett. We never got that. I think people want to see Wade Barrett, even if it's just for one more match, get back in the ring. But I think people have been talking about Nick Aldis for a long time getting back in the ring. And I think that you if Drew starts attacking Nick Aldis, and that could be a way to get off of this, right? That there is a version of this where you don't actually do another Cody Rhodes, Drew McIntyre match. Where Drew decides, he's still pissed at Cody Rhodes, but that can wait. That now if Drew McIntyre is going to terrorize people Petey Williams and Bobby Roode and Nick Aldis. Because Nick, when he suspended Drew on SmackDown, he made it sound personal. I'm tired of your nonsense. It's almost like he feels like Drew is doing this to him. Which means that Drew probably feels like Nick is not acting, in the best interest of SmackDown, but specifically punishing Drew McIntyre. It feels personal between these two. And I think the idea of going okay. And remember, there was a minute where they were teasing doing, I think it was Adam Pearce versus Roman Reigns. People know that these general managers used to be wrestlers. And they're not old. You know what I mean? And they're still in shape. Especially, you could see Nick Aldis is popping out of his suit on SmackDown. Carries himself with that air of confidence. Still comes across like a superstar. I could see this, and I think I'd be kind of happy about it evolving into a Nick Aldis, Drew McIntyre situation. Now, the question would be, does that stop Nick Aldis from being a general manager? Because he's a very good general manager. Does it stop Nick Aldis from being that on-screen authority figure? Or, it could be fun if you're okay, Nick Aldis now has to enter the talent pool. If Nick Aldis is going to wrestle a match, he has to enter the talent pool. And maybe Nick, enters a talent pool for 30 days, right? So he can wrestle Drew McIntyre. But within that 30 days, there will be an interim GM. So now we have this other GM stepping in because Nick Aldis has entered the talent pool. And this other GM is maybe some kind of heel GM. And then once the match with Drew McIntyre is over, Nick Aldis tries to get his job back. And it's when what's-her-face, the British lady, took Andy's desk on The Office. Nick now has to kind of fight to get the general managership back, and maybe there's a struggle there. Maybe there's some kind of hostility. I don't know. I'm thinking of a Vicky Guerrero type to be the interim general manager, and maybe we see some politicking going on. Maybe we see this interim general manager going hey, look, you may not like the way I'm doing things, but here are the results that I have. I've had less chaos on this show. I've had less this. I've had less that. And maybe the powers that be go, you know what? Nick, he's right. She's right. We have had less of this, that, and this since this began. And then it becomes a whole new struggle with Nick Aldis. I mean, maybe I'm going too far into it, but I think it could get pretty interesting. I think it could be fun. Speaking of fun, matches have been announced for the John Cena tournament. 4 of the first 8 round 1 matches have been announced for the Last Time Is Now tournament. So it would appear that they're doing this first round over the course of 2 weeks, which means they will surely not have the John Cena tournament finals at Survivor Series. It seems now like maybe the finals will be maybe on Monday Night Raw before Saturday night's main event. Maybe on that, like, whatever it is. If Saturday night's main event is December 13th, Saturday the 13th, maybe on December 8th, you have that John Cena tournament final on Raw on December 8th. Maybe. I don't know. They haven't announced that. But my bracket's been busted anyway. I mean, I still think we can get to the same result, and some of the people that I picked are in it, but not everybody. On Raw, we got Rusev versus Damian Priest. Now, I would not be surprised if Aleister Black gets involved in this match since Damian Priest got involved in the Cody match. But I didn't have Damian Priest in the tournament at all, but I wouldn't be surprised if Rusev moves forward. And then we have Shinsuke Nakamura versus Sheamus. Now, I wouldn't be surprised. This is going down on Monday Night Raw this week in Boston. If you're hearing this now and Raw has already happened, I would not be surprised if there's some kind of Notsam Wrestling update or emergency podcast coming off of Raw, since it's in Boston and it's John Cena and there's a lot going on there. So let's talk more about the SmackDown matches. On SmackDown, they announced 2 matches. Miz and Jey Uso was the first match they announced. Now, I did not have Jey Uso in this tournament either. Miz versus Jey Uso is a pretty massive match. I mean, Miz, I think, is a built-in favorite to win the tournament, and Jey Uso is one of the top stars on television right now. Like, and that does go for it. Look, and I think, and I hope, whether Jey Uso is going to win or not, I hope that commentary brings forward that Jey Uso was the guy that John Cena was left with in the ring at the beginning of the year. You know, I think that you can reshape the whole John Cena heel turn into what happened to John Cena after Jey Uso eliminated him from the Rumble. That Jey Uso was the one guy who changed John Cena's entire plan for this retirement tour and really sent him out for a loop for quite a while before he finally landed back down to earth. What would happen if Jey Uso bookmarked this whole thing? What would happen if John Cena's retirement year begins with Jey Uso and ends with Jey Uso? Now, I don't think Jey Uso wins the tournament. I think Gunther does. But I do think that that's a story worth telling on commentary. And the same thing for The Miz, man. The Miz has been politicking for this match. The Miz has been very, very vocal in interviews publicly about the fact that he should get this match. The Miz had a fantastic, fantastic Miz promo on SmackDown. I love when The Miz kind of drops the Miz character and gets angry. He gets that vein going in his forehead. He gets the glassy eyes. Glassy eyes, angry Miz is a great Miz. Glassy-eyed, angry Miz is the Miz that we got on Talking Smack. Glassy eyes, angry Miz is the Miz that we got on SmackDown this week when he's talking, or last week when he's talking about how he main evented WrestleMania with John Cena and he beat John Cena in the main event of WrestleMania, and it's a joke that he hasn't even gotten a sniff at a John Cena match. You know, I think both those things should be discussed. I think you have the potential of Carmelo Hayes interfering in this match. I would hope not. I mean, you have the potential of who could interfere. I guess, you know, maybe the Vision potentially interfere. It feels like to have either The Miz or Jey Uso lose this match clean would be a lot. However, The Miz beating Jey Uso clean, even if he didn't win the tournament, would put The Miz into a much higher standing than he has been all year. I don't know. This is going to be a very, very interesting match to watch. And then the other match is LA Knight versus a mystery opponent. Now, there had been a wonder, you know, when we found out the Tumbler was coming back, the Royal Rumble Tumbler was coming back to introduce the people that were going to be in this tournament. There was this thought of, well, what about the faces that don't even work here? Or the NXT people, right? That those people should come out as surprises, I would hope. And this is exactly how I hoped that they had done it. I was hoping when I saw them do what they did on Raw to introduce who was going to be in the tournament matches, I was hopeful that for those kind of non-traditional spots, non-Raw and SmackDown spots, they would keep them a surprise until the music played in the arena. And And this is exactly how to get that done, and I'm glad they did. Nick Aldis just looking at the paper and saying, well, I'll keep that to myself until SmackDown, which if I'm LA Knight, I'm furious about. You're not going to tell me who my own opponent is, but I think that LA Knight having a mystery opponent here is also extremely, extremely interesting. And of course, the conversation has begun as to who LA Knight's mystery opponent will be in this tournament. I think that there's a few people that could be, and I think that it's not just a mystery spot. I think you have to pay attention to the fact that it's a mystery spot paired up against LA Knight. People love LA Knight. People want LA Knight to win. People get mad when LA Knight does not win. They get frustrated when he loses. There is a growing contingency of people who don't understand why LA Knight has not been World Heavyweight Champion. People want to see LA Knight with one of those main belts. Not everybody, but a lot of people. There's a large group of people that do. And he is one of those guys that, I think people don't want to see. They certainly don't want to see him lose in the first round of the tournament. And if he gets eliminated at all from the tournament, whenever he does, you're going to have to be strategic about who it is that eliminates LA Knight from the tournament and what kind of effect you want that to have. You know what I mean? How you want people to feel. That's somebody that a lot of passionate people want to win. So if he doesn't win, you've got to tell me why. So, I was looking around at who people's picks were and also thinking to myself about who could be this mystery person. And then I'm looking at my own brackets going, well, who do I have that could fit as a mystery person? This could be Gunther's spot. Gunther has been out with an injury. His picture was in the promo for this tournament, but other than that, his name hasn't been mentioned at all. The idea that Nick Aldis would pick Gunther and keep it to himself would make sense because we haven't seen him in so long. So this could be Gunther's spot. I think there are a lot of people who don't agree with me, right? There are a lot of people who think I'm nuts for wanting Gunther to win. There are a lot of people, I look at these comments that go anyone but Gunther. There are a lot of people who just don't agree with my philosophy behind this. I think they're wrong, but that's the beauty of being a wrestling fan. I can think they're wrong. I think that if you want Gunther to be the spoiler, if you want Gunther to upset people, then by all means, this would be a good pick. But I also think that there is a fine line between heat and frustration. You want heat, but you don't want the audience to get frustrated with what's going on. And part of me goes like, would it be better for Gunther to take out whoever I had Gunther taking out in the first round? Like there are other people, even like, there are many people that Gunther could have in the first round that he could take out. I mean, he could take out LA Knight. But people are going to get really upset about that. And if you want people to get upset about that, then that is the move. Nick Aldis is also a name that's been thrown around to be in that spot. That people want to see Nick Aldis come back, but I think that that's not a good idea at all. Number one, it'd be weird that he was in this tournament. It'd be weird that his name was in the tumbler because he's not on the active roster. And number two, if you were to bring Nick Aldis back, that would be a big moment. Why would you put him against one of the top baby faces? Why would you put him in a match against somebody that people actively want to see win? It just, I don't understand that at all. I don't think Nick Aldis should be in the tournament. I don't think he should be in this spot. I think that you end up looking elsewhere. And, I think if Nick Nemeth were in this spot, it would be massive. I think the idea, and he would have to come out to his old Dolph Ziggler music. I'm here to show the world I'm here. Like if that music just started playing on SmackDown, people would go absolutely crazy. And I think in an LA Knight, Nick Nemeth, and people, the commentary would have to say formerly known as Dolph Ziggler, Nick Nemeth. People would see him as Dolph Ziggler in that spot. And I think LA Knight would win. And I think people would be happy either way. But I think just seeing LA Knight and Nick Nemeth in a match together in this tournament would kind of be, it would be the first match that was really, this is the magic of the tournament. You know, I do think Nick Nemeth would be really, really good in this spot. But the other person that could be is Joe Hendry. You know, I am very much of the opinion that Joe Hendry should be in this tournament. I don't think he's going to win the tournament. And I think LA Knight beating Joe Hendry. Here's the thing. Joe Hendry's another guy that people want. People like Joe Hendry. There are people who think Joe Hendry should get a match with John Cena. I don't think Joe Hendry, if there's only 3 matches left with John Cena, I don't think Joe Hendry should get a match with John Cena. But there are people that do, and I respect that. And so I think that if Joe Hendry is in this tournament, he's another one. Like if it's Joe Hendry versus Gunther, that would be frustrating for people who like Joe Hendry. But if it's Joe Hendry versus LA Knight beating Joe Hendry is not going to upset people. As I'm thinking about it right now, if you had feet to the fire, I think Joe Hendry and say his name and he'll appear would be huge on SmackDown. He could come out with Thea Hale. They've got a whole act they're doing in NXT. And I think Thea is awesome with Joe Hendry. But I do have to tell you, as I'm talking to you about it right now and thinking about it right now, I kind of love the idea of Nick Nemeth. I kind of love the idea of Nick Nemeth coming out to the Dolph Ziggler music and the idea of Nick Nemeth and LA Knight one-on-one. It's just such a special thing that would only happen under these circumstances. And that's what the tournament is all about. And I have LA Knight winning. But again, I think that if you see Nick Nemeth comes out, there's going to be a part of you that goes, I want that guy to win the tournament. If LA Knight beats him, you're not going to be upset because it's LA Knight. So Nick Nemeth might be my pick right now. Feet to the fire. I think I'd like it to be Nick Nemeth. I think that could be really, really special. We're going to get to emails in a minute, but speaking of special moments, Chelsea Green, first 2-time women's United States champion, Chelsea Green beats Julia in a shock title win on SmackDown, feet on the ropes, but regardless, she walks out with the United States Championship. Both she and Ethan Page are now double champions in that duo of AAA mixed tag team champions. So they share the mixed tag team championship. Ethan Page is the North American champion of NXT. Chelsea Green is the United States champion of WWE, women's United States champion. And so you got these two Canadians just fully representing our country, the United States of America, and our continent, North America. And I couldn't think of a better duo. You know, I love what's happening with Chelsea Green. You know, much like Dominik Mysterio in 2026, I think Chelsea Green is really, like, that's the time that Chelsea Green should have a lot of focus on her. I am just so impressed with everything Chelsea Green. And I think that she's gotten to the point now where, like Dominik Mysterio, it's graduated away from novelty and become like, no, for a lot of people, this is their favorite act on the show. And no matter what Dominik is doing, people are watching. No matter what Chelsea is doing, people are watching. I think that for me, she's been my favorite United States champion so far. So the idea that she would continue to be, and she's in this Dominik phase in her career right now, where you're going to see her on every show. You're going to see her on SmackDown. You're going to see her on AAA. You're going to see her on NXT. I mean, and you know, I think she's only going to get better and better and better. So very happy to see Chelsea Green win the Women's United States Championship back, and for Lash Legend to debut on SmackDown. They are really, like, heating up the women's tag team division right now with the Kabuki Warriors, with Io and Asuka. With Io and Rhea, with Charlotte and Alexa as champions. Now you've got Nia Jax and Lash Legend as a team, which I love that team. I've told you many, many times on this podcast what a fan I am of Lash Legend and how high I am on Lash Legend. And maybe the reason they're building these teams out is because it's going to be a part of the Women's War Games match. I do not know. Like I've said in the past, I think Raw should have the Men's War Games match. And so part of me thinks that, well, then SmackDown should have the Women's War Games match, which the fact that you've now added Lash Legend to the SmackDown women's roster, Charlotte and Alexa can go between SmackDown and Raw. I think you've got what you need. But we'll see what happens is maybe it doesn't need to be brand specific. Maybe you can have Raw and SmackDown kind of mix, because Raw has plenty of women to do a War Games match as well. But we'll see. I'm sure within the coming, if not this week, then next week, we'll have a pretty good idea of what that women's War Games match is going to look like. But it'd be cool. It'd be really cool if, 5 days ago, Lash Legend was not on the main roster, and then we find out at the end of this month she's in the War Games match. That'd be pretty sick. Let me know what you think about it. Let me know what you think about absolutely anything. NotSamWrestling@gmail.com is our email address. You can email us at NotSamWrestling@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast feed. You subscribe to the audio feed wherever you get this. You just hit subscribe. You leave a rating. You leave a review. Also, of course, youtube.com/NotSamWrestling. Subscribe to us there. Every podcast goes up. Videos all throughout the week. Check us out. Let's get into these emails. Again, my email address is notsamwrestling@gmail.com. So you just write in notsamwrestling@gmail.com. Julio writes in. My man Julio. Hey, Sam, big fan of the show. Here's my pitch for Dominik Mysterio's babyface turn. At Survivor Series War Games, Dom joins the heels team with Logan Paul in the bronze. It fits. He's WWE's top heel and already has heat with CM Punk, who'd lead the babyfaces. Yeah, I could see it, and it would build tension with Judgment Day, because they'd be like, why are you joining these guys? And he's like, well, they asked. That brings Ray onto Punk's team, setting up father versus son inside War Games without any masks or title stakes just yet. Okay, the heels win, giving Braun momentum towards challenging for Punk's title and letting Dom brag that he beat his dad again. Ray fires back, you've never beaten me one-on-one. Sparking clashes across WWE and even AAA that slowly earned Dom respect as he works through years of anger towards his father. It all ends at WrestleMania. Ray challenges Dom to a brutal street fight. Dom's title versus Ray's mask. Dom wins, but barely. Ray gets to unmask, and Dom stops him, pulling him into an embrace. Years of hate and pride melt away, setting up a natural feud with the Judgment Day, the ones who drove them apart. No. Julio, that takes too long. And also the idea of Dom embracing Ray. Hugging Ray. It's too much. It's too much. And the people in the Judgment Day that drove a wedge between Ray and Dom aren't really even in the Judgment Day anymore. I guess Balor kind of, but it was really Rhea Ripley that was doing it. She's not even in the Judgment Day anymore. No, I mean, I don't think I want to wait until WrestleMania to turn Dom pretending to be a heel for the next 5 to 6 months is crazy, dude. There's no way he's getting booed. And also, if he's in War Games, I can't do my Dominik Mysterio versus John Cena match. So I'm sorry. I appreciate your pitch. It's well thought out. There's plenty there, but because I can't have Dominik Mysterio being a heel all the way till then, I can't have, and you can't do a hair versus mask stipulation and have Ray not pay it off. You just can't. I mean, that's not even a babyface thing anymore. It's almost okay. And then you can't do John versus Dom at Survivor Series. I can't do it. It's not a bad pitch. It's well thought out. I like it, passionate, but it's not for me. Avik writes in, what's the haps from London? You've probably covered this on the pod, but who will face LA Knight in the Cena tournament? As it is in New York, I'm thinking Matt Cardona. Is it in New York? Where is SmackDown next week? Because it's on SmackDown. Let me look up real quick. And if it is in New York, I don't think it's in New York. It could be, I guess, because, by the way, the front page of WWE.com is Drew McIntyre and Nick Aldis yelling at each other. I don't know. I think we could see that Drew versus Nick match. I'm going to go to tickets at WWE.com. Oh, it's in Albany. Okay, so, I mean, it is in New York, but it's Albany. I don't think, I don't know if John Cena, I was looking at a picture of John Cena. If Matt Cardona is really an Albany guy, I don't think Albany and Long Island are, I guess, technically the same state, but, I mean, you might as well have it in Florida and say this is New York. I mean, it could be Matt Cardona, but I don't know. For this one, I don't know. It could be. But not because it's in New York, because that's Albany. Greetings to the LPTC. I write as an admitted newcomer to the Notsam fandom. That's okay, Steve. I like that. I'm a sucker for wild, rampant, and out-of-the-box speculation, which brings me to John Cena. First, if you've taken out a second mortgage to buy tickets to one of these last appearances, aren't you going to be PO'd if you don't get a match? I don't know. I don't know that people are expecting matches in Boston and New York, especially Boston. I don't know that people are expecting matches. Most of the TVs he's done, he has not done matches. So I don't know that it'd be reasonable to expect matches. Wouldn't matches in Boston and Madison Square Garden have to be against someone who isn't in the tournament, which would spoil the still in progress reveal for the 16-man field? Survivor Series, it probably won't be over. Well, I guess by Survivor Series, the first round will be over. If we do have 3 no tournament connection matches left, and Ray versus Dom is set for Survivor Series, how would you book them? Here's mine. Boston, out of the blue, Jeff Hardy. The crowd would pop for that music, total fan service, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you have somebody who doesn't work for WWE facing John Cena in one of John Cena's last matches, then it takes away a little bit from the tournament thing. I don't know if that does it for me. Madison Square Garden, Dom, maybe a grand stage, yes, but does this hinder the build to Dom's match with Ray? I think so. San Diego, could be any of those who aren't in the tournament final. Joe Hendry, Miz. Come on, dude. Last match, totally here with you, Gunther. All right, Steve, I feel like you have not put a lot of thought into this. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I appreciate you agreeing with me about Gunther, but I feel like you're just listing the dates. And you thought of the Jeff Hardy one. I do believe, I don't agree with you, but it would be exciting. I think you thought, but I don't think you've put much thought into Madison Square Garden or San Diego. I think you thought of the Jeff Hardy one. I think you're with me on the Gunther one, which I appreciate. But I would appreciate if you put, I could tell you had not put thought into it. God bless you. I could tell, though. All right. Tim writes in. Love your balance takes despite being contracted by WWE. I appreciate that, Tim. I'm not having a go at commentators. However, there isn't enough selling from commentators. Okay. Lash Legend comes out on SmackDown, helps Nia, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess she's on SmackDown and teaming with Nia now. I feel like back in the 90s, early 2000s, we get more questions from commentary to build up rather than explaining exactly what happened. Give us a response like, what is Lash Legend doing here? She's NXT. She has no business being here. What's she doing with Nia Jax? And then the backstage segment. I see what you're saying. No, I see what you're saying. I didn't really jump out at me as one way or the other, to tell you the truth. I think that there are those. I thought they covered it. And I think that a lot of times when people come up from NXT, it's being positioned more as the beginning of something rather than this big star is already here. You could argue, though, that it should be more like this big star is already here. I understand why it's not, but I don't know. I would have to go back and look at that, to tell you the truth. I would have to go back and look at that and see if it's like, okay, I see what's going on there. Christopher writes in, greetings, my OPTC. Oh. 5, 2. I had a fun idea. What if they give Kurt Angle a spot in the last time is now tournament because of his history with Cena? He's announced and comes out saying he's retired and not in shape to wrestle, but he'd like to give a spot to someone he believes in, and it's the return of Chad Gable. And he lets him get deep in the tournament only to lose to El Grande due to cheating. First of all, I think that the bones of that are good. So I've been looking at what Chad Gable's been doing on Instagram, and I think he's the next one that's going to come back absolutely yoked. It looks like he's putting on size for when he comes back, which I can't wait to see. I do love the idea of Chad Gable and Grande Americano being in a rivalry when Chad comes back. But I would prefer not for them to say Kurt Angle has a spot, because you don't want people to expect a Kurt Angle match and then get something else. But if they said, we're giving Kurt Angle the opportunity to choose somebody, You know what I mean? Or something like that, where Kurt Angle's job was definitely to introduce somebody, then I think that would be fair. Or even if they were like, there's a mystery spot. And then the ring announcer said, here to introduce the next participant, Kurt Angle. And then Kurt Angle comes out. The bait and switch of it rubs me the wrong way. But if they just announce Kurt Angle as, because it would make sense that he was a part of it because he's such a big part of the beginning of John Cena. And then Kurt Angle cuts a promo, and then he introduces Chad Gable. And that way, now that Kurt Angle has been put back into the conversation regardless, hopefully he'll be there at Saturday night's main event to congratulate John Cena, win or lose, on a career. And we just saw him earlier. So I think there is something there. Lenny writes in, with all the focus on the Vision, people expecting them in War Games, what if it's actually a SmackDown-focused match and we get MFTs versus a group of babyfaces they're feuding with, Machine Guns, Sammy, Nakamura, and Phoenix? I mean, mathematically it works, but is that the main event of Survivor Series? I would say no. War Games is a huge match. Unless you're going to open the show with the men's War Games and the real headline of Survivor Series is a championship match or whatever it is, I just don't see that as the big War Games match yet. There's plenty of time for the MFTs to build up, but they're not the top act on SmackDown. And historically, in the last several years, the men's War Games match has been the top act. And so since they're not the top act, that's why I would say that just because it fits mathematically doesn't mean it's full War Games. I would like it if they said, hey, you know what else we're going to do at Survivor Series this year? We're going to have a traditional Survivor Series match. It's going to be the MFTs versus this group, or the MFTs versus the Wyatt Six, or whatever it is. I wouldn't mind that. Lenny writes in, with more names to come in the Cena tournament, I was curious about your thoughts on a couple that came to mind. From NXT, Obafemi. I'd be fine if Obafemi was in it. It's not my preferred way to debut Obafemi. But I'd be fine if he was in it, and I could see it happening. We haven't seen him since he lost. Right. Why not two guys who Cena named in his pipe bomb promo, Nick Nemeth and Matt Cardona? I don't see them as, but I mean, I have Matt Cardona. Last week, I put him in my fantasy booking, and I did, yeah. And Nick Nemeth, I think that would be a good pick. I like both of those. Excuse me. This is just coming to mind as I watch SmackDown writing this. I don't think that Obafemi should face LA Knight. I don't think that would be great for Oba. But, if he were in the tournament, it could happen. It could happen. And then last email for today comes from Jacob. He writes in, Sam, I was listening to your pitch on Dom turning babyface at War Games, and I loved it. But what if Liv doesn't go babyface with Dom, and instead Dom reunites with Rhea and feuds with Liv and Finn? We've seen proof that matches like a mixed tag can still be awesome to this day. Love to know what you think. Keep up the great work, Podfather. Well, I appreciate that, but I don't think that that's a good idea. Because I think Rhea's got a whole other set of problems that she's dealing with right now. But realistically, why would Rhea take back Dom? Why would we not have Liv be a babyface? Everybody loves Liv Morgan. And if Liv is now teaming with Finn, what happens to both Roxanne and Raquel? Roxanne came in. You can do Dom and Liv versus Roxanne and Finn. Why add Rhea, have Liv be a heel when everybody loves Liv, and then have Roxanne left with nothing to do? I don't know why you would do it. If you do, email me back, notsamwrestling@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the pod, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you all very much, and we will see you very, very soon here on Not Sam Wrestling.